As the world experiences the loss of Queen Elizabeth II, a steadfast, ubiquitous figure, matchless in stature and beloved around the globe, we reflect on the historic significance of this moment within our own lifetimes. This video explores ways to discover and document first-person accounts of historic events to include in the family histories you build. First-person accounts of historic events are valuable and interesting. They are also some of the most fragile and endangered elements of our genealogic records, subject to loss if not recorded, and subject to alteration if not recorded in a timely and careful manner. Here we will discuss using historic events to shape your research plans, finding accounts and clues left by non-living ancestors, interviewing living relatives, and being prepared for the next great historic event by creating a plan now. First, we'll look at using historic events to shape your research plans. When crafting or updating your research plan for a living or deceased family member, a timeline of historic events is a great framework to use. Start with a generic timeline of world events specific to the period of your search. You can often find these in world history textbooks and at several sites online. Then add events specific to the location where your subject lived. Check local historical societies, colleges and universities, libraries, tourism websites, and local government websites. Next, use a checklist of the topics of interest to you to fill in any gaps. I'm interested in military history, inventions and exploration, and the history of the national parks, for example. And lastly, compare your subject's timeline to the events in the lives of close family members who may have shared your subject's experiences. This makes for a robust timeline for use as a framework for your research. Here is an example. Stephen M. was born in 1800 and died in 1876. He lived his entire life in Baltimore, Fells Point, and Canton specifically. The timeline begins with the facts we know about Stephen. Next, I added the world events during his lifetime and the local events, the Battle of Baltimore and the beginning of the B&O Railroad. Next, a few events of interest to me, and finally, an important fact from the timeline of two of his sons-in-law, both of whom served in the Civil War. This timeline motivated me to look deeper at two events, the Battle of Baltimore and the assassination of Abe Lincoln. A close review of maps and my own personal knowledge having grown up in Canton reveal that if Stephen were in the area of either his home in Canton or his place of work in Fells Point during the Battle of Baltimore, he would have certainly heard those bombs bursting in air. In the absence of a specific witness account made by a deceased ancestor, the timeline previously discussed can help identify dates and locations to examine further within diaries, letters, and other artifacts they may have left behind. The timeline can also put context around photos and keepsakes and can sometimes help explain gaps and conflicts in our records. The examples here were rediscovered among hundreds of letters when targeting the dates of specific events during World War II. The first quote refers to the D-Day landings as something like an invasion. The second was written by my great-grandmother on hearing of the death of President Roosevelt while in the midst of writing a letter to her son. These short quotes of just a few words can add depth and character to the stories of their authors, my ancestors in this case. Memories fade and are sometimes influenced and altered by the accounts of others. The Mandela effect is named after the infamous false recollections of people around the world who remember exactly where they were when Nelson Mandela died in prison in 1980. He didn't. He became president of South Africa and died in 2013 at the age of 95. This phenomenon occurs when stories are repeated over and over again with false information. More and more people adapt their recollection to the false information, and soon the false story becomes the widespread belief. The existence of social media today speeds up this destructive process. Obviously, your best defense against fading, failing, and altered memories is to collect detailed accounts as soon as possible after an event occurs. There are many tools and resources available online to help you collect information from your living relatives. Some of them are listed here. Here are also my recommendations and best practices for gathering accounts from your living relatives. Research the event and use key facts to help jog the memory, but be careful not to steer or influence the recollection. Craft a list of open-ended questions to gather not just the basic who, what, where, and when, but also ask how your subject felt. Ask your subject about her immediate first impressions. In other words, what did she think was happening at the time versus what she later found out. Remember to ask your subject about other friends, family members, and neighbors who also may have been witness to the event. Remember to ask if anyone wrote an account at the time. And don't forget to ask how the event impacted her life, and specifically what changed. Being prepared for the next historic event is a best practice. Reach out to your family members now and update contact information. Know where they live and where they work. Let everyone know that you are the family historian and invite their input anytime. You may want to create an email form letter with generic questions ready to update when the next event occurs. Be ready to use technology, such as shared drives and social media groups, to request, collect, and share input. Lastly, if, like me, you remember exactly where you were and what you were doing when Challenger exploded, when the Berlin Wall came down, on the morning of September 11th, 2001, or when you learned the Queen had died, don't forget to record your own memories about these historic events. Use your genealogy expertise and leave a detailed and personal account for your future generations. I hope you found this video to be helpful and motivating. For more information and links to the resources discussed, please check the description below the video. Please like, subscribe, and share, and click the notification bell. The Queen is dead. Long live the King.